I'm Melony a global real estate advisor with Gibson Sotheby's based in Metro Boston. I closely advise homebuyers and sellers of all stages of life, guiding them to intelligent, winning decisions.
I'm Derek Lumpkins, a real estate investor with a background in community organizing. I also enhance equity and inclusion initiatives at companies and organizations, and I guide leaders through executive coaching.
When we get together, we dive into the intersections of culture, class, mindset, and Black freedom.
Welcome to the Black Landing Forum,
a podcast about Black wealth, power, and land.
Hello.
Derek.
How's it going?
Greetings. Oh, just such a delight to see you and be with you as always.
Same here, especially in these days.
Mm.
In these days and these times, I mean, we don't need to bring those people in right now, because I'm sure they will show up at some point in the conversation. But it is definitely a pleasure to see you, and it will also be a pleasure to spend time with our guest today. I'm excited for this conversation.
It's going to be a treat for us and our audience. Yeah.
Yes. And in thinking about this particular conversation, I was thinking about concepts of freedom and liberation. And I was sort of like, I kind of feel like they're different. I think they are different. But, in thinking about and preparing for this conversation, I was like, what exactly are they? How would I define them? And I also wanted to know how you would define them.
Yeah.
Because when I was thinking about the difference between freedom and liberation, I was thinking about freedom is sort of like a state of being. Like, we are all free. All of our listeners are free. There's no one holding us in place. There's no one holding us in any type of bondage. Whereas liberation is taking that freedom and adding some agency to it. So you have the agency to really say, okay, yes, I am free physically, but I'm also free emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I can create, I can build, I can do things, I can reject things if I want.
Yeah.
But you have a little bit more agency that is part of being liberated.
Yeah.
But that's just sort of the dictionary probably has different definitions, but that's kind of where I am landing at this point. But I also wanted to toss it at you and see what you thought about that.
I really appreciate you even inviting the question, because it's something we often run into in our conversations. And I find myself often invoking the word freedom and saying, what we're trying to do here is talk about Black freedom, pursue Black freedom. And even the ways that we size that up sometimes feels like that's on different planes, different dimensions. And I think I would take the characterization you provided and add to that liberation, in my sense of it and understanding of it, is also relational. So that liberation is about how we relate to structures and systems, and our ability to recreate structures and systems. And then the second piece is in service of a group, a collective, not just ourselves, but others as part of us. I think those things round out what liberation is for me and my mind. So that also pursuing it is active, and that such that you can have liberatory practices internally and collectively.
Right. Yeah. I think that's where the agency comes in. When I was thinking agency, I was thinking about in relation to structures, not just in relationship to other people. And especially given the examples we're seeing these days. So, this is still the early bit of 2025. Who knows what people will be thinking to 4 to 10 years from now. But at this moment in this time, if people are looking back, or if you're living in it right now, the ways in which we are expected to relate to the systems around us, the systems that are impacting us, the systems that are being dismantled, actively being dismantled, or the attempts at dismantling them, are people, I just kind of wonder, yes, we're free to engage or not engage, but are people also using their agency to rebuild, to repair, to respond?
Yeah.
I see little clips here and there, people doing things, but will there be a groundswell of that?
And I would say a collective groundswell. Like, will we be interconnected in that response? And how do we be interconnected in that response?
Right.
If there's any time, this is the time for us to flex those abilities. I think it's in us.
Yeah.
We access it over and over and over and over again in myriad ways. This whole situation is an opportunity, a big old opportunity for us to be human and to be whole and to be connected and to be sane, I think.
This is our second chance because we had the first chance during the pandemic. And shortly after the pandemic, when we had opportunities to say, okay, we no longer have to do things the way in which we did that got us up to this point. And so when the pandemic began to ease and we began to come back into
Yeah.
society,
To
we
normal.
had the opportunity to rebuild and recreate in a different way, and we chose not to.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was a societal thing or was a government leadership thing, but we chose, or we were forced to choose at some point, not everybody, not to do that. We chose not to choose a new path. We chose to force people to go back to the office. We chose to force them to do things that were just not healthy or not working or just not respecting people. And so, this is perhaps, at least in the US, I don't know this is going to play out
Yeah.
in other places. This is perhaps the opportunity for us to say, okay, this is our second chance to have a better start or have a fresh start.
And what you're describing to me, really the way I experience in my own body and my daily life is about redefining my relationship to the grind, because the grind is there and it wants to churn you. It wants to churn your soul. And how do you understand who you are outside of and independent of that grind? What else is there? And I think if we turn ourselves away from the production mode of keeping things status quo, then we start to find some bright spots of whoa, is this what liberation can feel like? Yeah.
Yes. And I know our guest today is going to take us on quite a journey through a lot of this. And this last bit of this piece of the conversation, our intro, is reminding me of the conversation I had with our guest on the scarcity mindset. So when the guest comes on, and for those of you who are watching, you're like, wait, hasn't she been on before? That was on the other podcast that I do, and we were focusing on the scarcity mindset. And in that conversation, we went from the scarcity mindset to the abundance mindset, and then we ended up talking about Black liberation. So this is sort of taking that end of that last conversation and taking it forward. So we're talking about liberation, freedom, and we'll probably bring in scarcity and abundance as well. So just want to throw that out there for folks who may have seen that and were wondering what's going on. And if you haven't seen that, we will put the links to that episode in the show notes as well. So
Yeah, that's a great offer. And I will say, I do think we will touch on scarcity and abundance, because there's a question that you and I also have that hangs, which is about a sense of, freedom from the fear of things falling apart financially. How do you keep a sense of financial stability? And is it even practical to assume that you can keep, that you can control, that you can contain that sense of financial stability? So, that's a humbling one for me. Because I work really, really, really hard to not let things fall apart. And so, what if I were free from that endeavor as well? So with that, I know that that's a question I want to bring to our guest today. Our guest is Sister Sadada, an embodied liberation teacher. They are Black Nipmuc of Irish descent. They work to support others to embody their liberation through their bodies and relationships and the structures they live and work in. They hold a master's in theological studies and indigenous traditions and a master's in education. They are a trained yoga teacher, tantric meditation teacher, and have spent much of their life as a dancer. Delighted to meet you, Sister Sadada.
Hey.
hey, welcome,
Hi.
welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Kanipiam. Welcome.
Always good to chat with you. It's a delight to see you as well.
I so enjoy chatting with you, Derek and Melanie. I really, really enjoy getting to know you, working with you, and listening to y'all chat about this thing that I love, liberation. I love it. I love it. I'm feeling a little punchy this morning, so you might hear more laughter. It's just the shaking up of joy because God knows we need it these days.
We
Amen.
sure do. We sure do. And I'm sure we're going to have plenty of joyous moments in this conversation.
Yeah.
But I wanted to throw out to you, so the same question that I asked Melanie. Freedom versus liberation, or freedom and liberation, or freedom or liberation. How would you define either one of those?
Yeah. I really liked what you offered, Derek. Because I really, in some ways, totally agree. The freedom, and in many ways, it's this right. It's this, and it is. In some ways, we have relation to it, and when we talk about, I want to be free to or free from, right? But it really is in many ways a right. A way of being sometimes, or a desire, aspiration, you know. And then when we move into liberation, right, we really do work into the agencies you talked about. But I would also like to say um, the awareness with the space, right? And I think that when we move into that space, we realize that liberation exists not only in the seen, but also the unseen, right? And Buddhism, we talk about the relative and the ultimate, right? And if you read the Heart Sutra, and I've read it a lot, I've listened to it be taught, and really thought about kind of the focus of the Heart Sutra is something that gets talked about a lot. It's like form is empty and empty is form. And this notion that that which we can see is empty, and that emptiness isn't that it lacks anything. I mean, it's full of something. It's full of space. But that spaciousness is also form, right? And so to understand that, you have to understand two things. One, that there are existence of liberation for the context in which we're talking about, that is both relative, like social, personal, historical, future, present. But there's also liberation that is beyond that.
Yeah.
And then I feel like, I'm very, very, influenced. As both of you all know, I work with Lamarad, its team. It's a dear friend of mine and has taught me a lot about the Tantric Dharma path, Tantric Buddhist path, and, his work around the new sense. When he talks about, the ways in which we have to move from this place of our pain, our trauma, our, whatever constitutes our brokenheartedness, to become spiritual warriors. And I've come to understand that, and he does write about this too in the book, that we have to be able to transmute that, and in some ways be a bridge between that which needs to be freed in a seen way, in a practical way. Our systems, right? They need to be freed, right? Our relationships need to be free. We need to be free in ways that have to do with our ways in which we see and construct our own self and identity, right? And we have to free the unseen world. Things are deeply, and we could start with the ancestors, right?
Wait, did you just say we have to free the unseen world? I just want to make sure we're following you.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's really what ancestral work is about. It's about working in collaboration, right, with those who are our blood or our love lines, to free their suffering, because they can't. Not that they can't do that, they're not able to do that in ways that we're able to, because we have a consciousness awareness. And that's like back to that liberation and agency, right? That, yes, it is about choice. But before choice, there has to be an awareness. And if your awareness is narrow, your choices become narrow.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have two thoughts running parallel at the same time. I'm trying to like separate them out. So in thinking about liberation prior to starting this recording, I was watching um an account on Instagram called Check Your Privilege. And the person who was speaking was talking about liberation, and she was saying that in order to have a liberated experience or to have a liberated lifestyle, um, those folks who want that cannot have this rugged individualism. She didn't say it in quite those words, but that was sort of like what I was taking of it. And she was saying you have to learn how to be in community, which involves asking for help, asking questions, being open to other people coming and being a part of your life. And I kind of feel like we're sort of getting close to that. You know, what you're saying, what she was saying, is sort of getting close to that in my mind, at least. But then I was also thinking, how does someone know that they are liberated? Or how do they know that they are on the verge of being able to liberate themselves? Because again, you know, we're all free. We're all free in a very, you know, very common sense of the word. But how does one know that they're like, yeah, I if I do this, or if I start doing more of that, or if I start engaging other people differently, then I can live a more liberated experience.
I'll speak first about my own experience of experience liberation. I think for me, it first has very little to do with how you get there or what you do or what you accumulate. It has so much to do with what you're willing to let go of. Liberation's not. It's, it is a heavy task in that it takes a courageous and brave heart, right?
Mhm.
But you got to lighten your load.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times, whether this is in community or movements, I'm speaking about us as Black people, right? We forget how spiritual our liberation, love ancestors were. And for some of us, our blood ancestors, right? These were people deeply situated in their faith or in their relationship to land, right? And I mean spiritual relationship here, right? That they were deeply, whether they were land listeners, whether they were herbalists or astrologers or people who understood how to divine the wind and other elements, right? These were people who had to let go of a lot of what the world was telling them, who they were and how they had to be free and liberated. And they had to imagine, they had to counsel with, the unseen beings who were already free or who wanted to help them to get free or who wanted to get free through them, right? To say, okay, now I'm ready. And it's not even like a readiness in the terms you're sitting at the start line of the track meet, right? But it's really is like a free fall.
Something you'd like to add, Melanie?
I think I spent a lot of my life afraid of feeling the free fall. I worked so hard not to fall. So, it's interesting. What I literally was thinking and feeling when you said that, Sister Sadada, I was like, oh, so that's a good sign if I start to feel like I'm dropping and almost, where I'm becoming weightless. It's
Mhm.
terrible.
Mhm.
Let go, to lose the grip. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Mhm.
But
Can we define just a little bit more though? What are we letting go of?
The bullshit, the shit that we thought that mattered.
the things we expect of ourselves, the things we think the world and others and systems expect or need of us. I know I could say that especially for my just my identities, but also as Black and female and child of immigrants and all the rest, but also just someone who has a business, who doesn't want things to fall apart.
Mhm.
And we're in an economy that's utterly unpredictable. But to me, failure is falling. And, I've had some humbling changes happen not at my own instigation in the last year plus. And someone just asked me last week, how am I doing with some of these changes? Including especially in my business. And I actually found myself saying, well, I had been so afraid of failing, because to me, failing meant like hitting the ground, like almost like skydiving, nose diving down and going. And then I realized, oh, actually, the ground is where I belong, because the ground is like, well, there's something stable about it. There's also a concept of the groundless ground. But for this conversation here, it's like to hit the ground. You think of the ground in other ways other than, oh my God, I crashed. You could think of it as a place of nourishment. It's the earth. It's rich. There's nutrients. There's depth. And I tend to be afraid to go in that direction, because down seems bad in the kind of way that we're oriented to grind towards some future success against all odds, which I tend to function. I've tried to master. And so when I hear you say, let go of and free fall, that sounds like permission to stop trying so hard.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm going to throw in my own little
Yeah.
assessment around this, because yes, Sister Sadada said free fall, but the way you kept saying down, like falling down, fail, like you kept equating failure and failure with falling down.
Yeah.
And I don't know, when I think of a free fall, I don't automatically think of the ground. I don't think of like the splat if your parachute doesn't open. I think of like you're in the air and you're in the medium, just experiencing it. And so, yes, you literally are going down because gravity is pulling you, but you're also passing through.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm kind of like, okay. And have you ever done skydiving, like even indoor skydiving?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
I haven't done the actual jumping out of a plane, but I've done the indoor.
Yeah.
We could do it together.
You should.
Wow. I love that.
It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing, because then you get that sense of, you do lose that sense of control, because you're in this 3-dimensional space that you don't have any, you literally have no attachments to. Your feet are not on the ground. You're not holding on to anything. You do have a trainer who kind of helps you to keep from hitting the walls, but you're literally just passing through, and you're experiencing life, experiencing the world, you're experiencing the experience in a completely different way. So when I think of this free fall, my mind kind of goes there first. It doesn't get to that splat of the ground if your parachute is or even like the soft landing, because I watched Mission Impossible, the latest one recently. He had a soft landing at the end. But I think of it as a passing through, and I think of it as the agency to say, I don't need this. So, society says, let's build these structures, let's get this title, let's have this salary, let's do this, let's do that. And I'm like, what if I just don't need that?
Yeah.
And to me, that is where my mind will drift when I start thinking a little bit more about liberation, at least in terms of how I would want to live it and help other people achieve it. I don't know if that helps at all.
Well, I'm going to add a third thing. That maybe that free fall means that you will fly.
Yeah.
And I think it's the book, They Had Wings to Fly. It's a children's book about slaves who flew to freedom. I believe it's Virginia Hamilton, but I'll have to look it up. The images are just beautiful. And the story is too, but this whole notion of falling, we think of it in such this gravitational way because we're earthen beings, right?
Yes.
But there are other beings, our winged friends. They might be machine winged planes, but I'm thinking about the feather winged ones, who fly.
Yeah.
And I do believe that we have that capacity. Maybe it's like a float, but to soar. That liberation as the work of really peeling back anything that tethers you too much to the earth. I mean, you know how to come down to the earth, fall if you need to, right? But that we can fly, we do have wings to fly, and to navigate terrains that we couldn't get to, right? If we were just suspended or just on the earth.
Mm.
So I'm thinking about that. And also kind of what you all were talking about, I want to bring in, so one of my oldest identities, other than being Black, Native and Irish descent, and being a woman and queer and all those things from birth, my oldest identity is as an artist, as a performing artist in particular. And dancing was my primary form, and then theater, which I have my undergrad in, is my secondary. But what dance has taught me about these things is quite fascinating. I just kind of want to bring it into the conversation, but into the body and like how these things work. So in dance, a lot of times you learn how to fall. Falling might be part of a training. Falling might even be part of a choreography, right? But in order to do it, you have to have relationship with actually two things. Kinesthetically, like in terms of schematically in your physical body. One is the ground, and not in the relationship that you think, right? But that it's just statically there. But what's your relationship to the ground? And knowing that it's changing, as well as what is the weight relationship to the ground, because you want to disperse it or condense it as you go down. And the second piece that's really important is your core, which is kind of like your other ground, your root, your pelvis, right? So you have these two grounds at work and that you're constantly operating and tethering to. So I think a lot of times when we think about when we fall, we have to let go of concepts of who we are. We get so caught up and this is, this is the emotional body. This is how like where kind of our brain is wired and our cultures and societies is wired towards that. But I think we're in a different time where we can decide, right? That like, yeah, this is going on, but just like I know that in this fall, there are two grounds that I have to tend to, I can also decide to give a little bit more attention or a lot bit more orientation to those grounds and decide how I'm going to be in relationship to what is falling around me, because the other thing about falling is that there is something else you're falling into, there is something else. I mean, again, I think that's why I said, like, we got to let this shit go. And I'm not, I say that, really lightly because it's not all shit. I mean, we have to let go of who we thought we were, who we thought the world is, and move into something and moving to something that is becoming. And in that becoming, we have to take with us the energy. We have to create that thing and not get so sucked up in what is dying. And that's hard. The death is hard only because we have moved away from our cultures and traditions that allow us to be in better relationship with death, because death is coming to all of us. That is just a guarantee, And so why then we are not oriented or practicing or sharing those traditions or re-enlivening those traditions that allow us to be in better relationships so that we can be in better relationship with life. Life, not just as the living, but as in what's being birthed, what's being created.
Is it a straight line? So
No.
in the letting go. So okay, you already answered. I was gonna give a
No.
little bit more context. So is it
We don't do exactly. That's part of the pain, right? And I don't want to just say problem to be critical. It is a problem, right? I mean, because it's people get stuck in it, and because they think it's linear. It's not. I mean, this whole concept of Gregorian time, we know that it's very colonizing and it's very patriarchal in that it organizes in a very specific and rigid way. But if you're like me, like many Indigenous people, many peoples who are living in the season, things change. And change doesn't, I mean, if something's going to die, something else is going to be reborn. That in of itself is not a lie. It's much more of a circle, and many Indigenous practices that I myself practice, that I've studied, that I know is out in the world, that time is a circle. That means that process is a circle, and not circle in that it's the same thing. You've been changed when you move through something. So when you
It's
get back
a
to it,
spiral.
yeah, it can be like a spiral. Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Or heliflex. I mean, there's a lot. I've seen a lot of different, but I just use the circle or the sphere that we are all sitting on, right? As just kind of the visual metaphor to help us understand that grief, death, life, it passes in a circular way.
So as we're talking about cycles
Yeah.
and circles and spirals, we're talking about some of the ways in which things are born and die, and then new things are born, or other things are reborn. I want to sort of shift a little bit, because when we spoke to you prior to the recording, we were talking about some of the cycles that you do and that you have done, in terms of starting off in Massachusetts, then leaving, going somewhere else, coming back to Massachusetts, then going somewhere else.
Beautiful.
You have this cycle. Thank you. You have the cycle of leaving and returning. So
Yeah.
I wanted just to open up the conversation there, just to get a sense of how does that fit into your practice. And also, when this podcast is thinking about Black power, wealth, and land.
Mm.
And so just thinking about the land portion of that, because I know that's important to you. Could you just say a little bit about that?
Yeah. I feel like part of the work for me, what is remembering that kind of putting back the pieces is that cycle of leaving and returning. And I'm not always like, when I say leaving, it's not even always as straight as like, so I left Massachusetts on what I call my pandemic pilgrimage in 2020. And I was invited by my teacher down in Mexico. And that was important that I go, because I hadn't been there yet. And we had been working together for some time. And, I really believe that, like, to leave, it's almost like you're not just, and it's hard to say this because, there are those who feel hurt, including parts of yourself that are behind you, right? But without those things behind you, you wouldn't go forward, you know? And so there is a kind of leaning in. It's another kind of fall, if you will, a fall olay, if you will, where you lean in, and I leaned in and I went there, and to be in that land, because I know that there is such wisdom to land. And I don't just know this because I've had this unique experience. I've seen this. My elders, my teachers have shown me the ways in which, like, land remembers. Land has, like, both medicine, it has wisdom. Yes, it has trauma. Yes, it, has people's pain in different forms. Um, well, and more than that, it does have wisdom. And um for me to be able to move into land spaces, right? Some of which I have love or bloodlines with, some of which I don't. I'm going primarily for the purpose of listening to that land. It didn't become really clear to me until I returned back to Massachusetts, that that's what I was doing. And that came in a dream, actually, where my ancestors came to me. And it was a really powerful dream, meaning that I was shook and awake, and they had a big panic attack. And, but I was very clear. It got me very clear. Let's just say that panic attack got me very clear. But they had said to me, don't let them forget who we are. And when I returned to this land, I spent some time near a body of water, that it too, when I say land, I also mean the waters too, um, had information for me. And it was like, listen to the language of this land. And, and that's what I do. That's what I do when I go to a place. When I lean into a place, I'm also returning to a part of me that needs to be heard, and then that needs to be brought forth as medicine in the world and with those who I work with and the communities with.
Are there particular places that matter more to you in terms of where you go and that drive you to come back? Are you driven to come back, or is it like you need to come back for some other reason?
Yeah, our place is calling to you.
Yeah, I mean, let me say that like when I come back, I'm never coming back the same. Like when I came back to Massachusetts, I was not the same person. I wasn't really coming back to like, I mean, I did have community that if I wanted to be in that community, I could have done that, but my work was shifted. I needed to be outside. I needed to be in a rural place, and I grew up in a city, some city you grew up in, and city you live in right now, Melody, like so I, so I think for me, the place is now, and the place now that's calling me and where I know I'll be at for the rest of my life is Ireland. And that's my final blood ancestral place for me to go and to listen and to be a steward, a student, and yeah, of that land, So I think the lands that mean a lot. I mean, it's so hard. I love the lands. I love peopling, humaning. I just think it's cool, as hard as it is. It's so precious.
Yeah.
It's so precious because we could have come back as something else.
Yeah.
When we got this consciousness and this ability to have agency and to be aware and to talk and to do these things, it's like, wow. And at this time particularly, I am jazzed. Yeah, I don't know why I use that word, but I'm using that word. I'm jazzed. I am jazzed about being human. But I think that a lot of what leads me to place is the call. It's the call, and I listen.
There's listening to be done, which means that we're probably being called by, as you would say, ancestors, unseen beings, unseen relatives of all forms, probably all the time. And there's also the realm that we live in every day that we think of as material and critical and urgent that needs our tending. And I am always like reaching, yearning to understand what I want to make of this life, this form, this time. Like I want to maximize it and optimize it. And you could even say capitalize on the fact that I am in this form, in this way. Like I want to enjoy the F out of it and do justice to it. And so how I'm like clearly living in a tension between wanting to listen to a call, wanting to be, I often feel called by trees, how to be attuned to that and I don't know, what do you say? Do well in the everyday of our busy lives where there are all these commitments that pull or that we feel are pulling us. Like, how do you do? What do you do?
But why do you feel like you don't maximize it already? Why do you feel like you're not taking advantage of your time?
Really darn good question, Derek. Lumpkins, teacher. That's a really good point okay, your question just made me feel like, oh, I'm suspended in the air. I'm like, oh, maybe I'm fine. Like, maybe I'm fine. Like maybe I am living well and I don't have to rush ahead and try to accomplish something or achieve something or beat
What if you
back.
even took out the word maybe? I am fine. I am living well. If you just even started to reframe the way you talk about yourself.
Yeah.
Find yourself in a different
I know that it's true. But okay, here's the thing. I know it in this kind of very cognitive, intellectual way. Like I know I have achieved a thing, but I feel that I've achieved that thing, which therefore feels like I could lose that thing. It doesn't feel guaranteed or tethered to something bigger and broader. It feels like somehow against all odds, yes, I've been helped along by all manner of angels, but I don't know, at some point I could slip. So it's interesting. I think everyone's bearing witness to me having this spiritual teaching. which is I feel that, yeah, how can I just enjoy that I'm doing well by this doing justice to this existence for myself and others that I'm in contact with. Knowing that I'm often distracted by, pulled by the busyness, or what we could call in short, the grind.
So, Sadada, we're gonna bring you back in, but I definitely I have to ask Melanie this one question. So when we had our episode with Malia, the last one, we were talking about the Black middle class. And there was a point where she said this whole aspect, this whole design of the middle class is an illusion.
Yeah.
So if you want it, just take it. It's just an illusion. Did you have, I don't remember you having a response during the episode visually, and you didn't say anything, but did you have an internal reaction, or did it sit with you over time?
I didn't hear it. I probably couldn't hear it. But I know I felt frightened. By the time we ended that episode, I was like, oh, this is alive. Because Malia was basically positing, you could choose to give this stuff away. You could choose to let it go. You could choose to stop.
Yeah.
And to say that, for me to take that in, I understand it intellectually. And somehow I've also surrounded myself by people in my life who are actually comfortable with that frame of mind. It's like I'm drawn to people who live their lives that way. But I somehow am working really, 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 really hard to have what I think is a version of independence. I want liberation. I am very much in that space in my heart and my mind, but I'm also in this material way efforting to have a sense of what I think is a kind of security, material.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you want a softer version of liberation, and I just feel like liberation is all or nothing.
I'm listening.
Yeah, I mean, I think that once you decide to be something, it's not just like, oh, I'm gonna be it from 9 to 10. You don't, in some ways, yeah, you have agency to be liberated. In my experience and in where I'm at in my liberation lane, if you will, but is that once you have agency once you decide to be it. The extent to which, how, when that comes to you. And yeah, you do have to make choices. I'm gonna keep choosing to show up to this, but it doesn't go away, and it doesn't you can't organize it.
Yeah.
Be liberated over here, but over here I gotta do what I gotta do. There is something really pervasively expansive about liberation when you say yes to it.
Pervasive. I love that word.
You can't unwind it, basically, because once you get a taste, yeah, it makes
There's no going back. There's no going back. There's no going back. I'm sorry.
No. I mean, you're saying what I'm thinking. Like, once you get a taste of it, it's like, well, why would I give this up?
That part.
Yeah.
And that part. Why would I want a watered down version of it? Why would I want just a nibble? And that's where that fire comes in. And that fire, I think, is courage.
I think for me, I started getting a taste of it, I don't know how many years ago, but and I'm probably still acquiring the taste, but when I learned that I had the ability and the vocabulary to say, I don't need you to bosses. And not because they were mistreating me or because of whatever, but I was sort of like, I don't need this experience. I don't need this role. I don't need to ask permission. This goes back to conversations we've had in the past, Melanie, where it's like we have to seek permission. You have to ask. You have to request someone to have a sick day, to have a vacation day, to go to the doc. I mean, it's sort of like, who wants to do all that? And so when I got to the point where I was sort of like, I don't need you. I began to feel a different level of agency and a different level of potential and possibility.
And with that agency also becomes responsibility and maturity, right? I think, I really, really return to my love of James Baldwin, and artist struggle for integrity is something I go back to as an artist. But I was also reading Fire Next Time on Inauguration Day. But in Artist Struggle for Integrity, he talks about that you get to this place where you realize the illusion of security.
Yeah.
Artists understand that all security is an illusion, right? And that you also realize that how you're responsible for nobody but yourself.
Mm.
Now that's not individualistic, because the artist also understands how interconnected and interdependent we are. I need you to reflect back to me what it is the subject, but also the inspiration of my creative work, and to bear witness to it.
Yeah.
To receive it, to support it, give feedback on it, right? So the artist understands that. So when he says that you're responsible for nobody but yourself, not for God the Father, not your mother, not nobody, he says, right? That's not to say you don't have practical things that you do have to be responsible for, but your core responsibility is for you.
Yeah.
Your desires, your wounds, your wants, your wishes, your dreams. And as you are able to become more responsible, then you mature. And we see, we know, we read, we've heard about people who lack that, or who are not interested in maturity.
Right.
Or as he says, in an emotional kindergarten. You can't get free. I mean, you can't be in a choice of freedom, liberation,
Mm-hmm.
and not have that deep-seated sense of responsibility, so that you can be almost a grown and to ask for what you want, to create what is possible and what is to come through you, to decide that these are the people who are in community with, where we are supporting each other to do that. We are resourcing each other to do that.
But can you also just connect what you just said, to the scarcity mindset and the abundance mindset?
Yeah, I mean, the scarcity mindset's about fear, right? And the abundance mindset's about love, right? And so if I'm afraid, if I feel like I don't have enough, or I'm not enough, I can't even see, what is mine to be responsible for, and to embody that, and to live that, and to grow that into what is a mature human in the world, right? And with each other and without, right? But when I'm in a place of abundance, I see not only the multiple ways in which I can be responsible, but the multiple ways, like the things I can be responsible for, but also the multiple ways in which I can be responsible for that. And the multiple ways in which maturity does look like this, right? It's much more expensive, creative.
Yeah.
And I am much more that. The world becomes that.
Melony, how are you feeling?
Well, I am realizing more and more that I am moving through, as you described it, Derek, right in view of our audience. So you know how, Derek, you gave the example of, again, I keep referring to it in shorthand as freedom from the grind, where you were like, yeah, I'm not, I realize I don't have to ask for permission. And I remember when we first started our podcast, we talked about being unbossed. So that is my kind of MO, right? Like, I'm not somebody who can have a job. I know this. I've known this for a long time, right? I just can't function in that way. I do need things to be on my terms. But I'm realizing sitting here that a big part of that, even though I've been free, you could say, from some of the more typical conventional structures, I have not been free from my own fear of not having control. Because the reason I can't be boss is because I feel like I need control. And so I think I'm sitting here realizing, oh, maybe I'm getting closer and closer to a willingness to relinquish my sense of, my idea of control, because there is something calling to me, which is to be not panicked about, well, what happens and how can I shore up? So much of what I have, I think, excelled at is kind of a very individual drive, right, against all odds to win. And so I'm a very good child of capitalism, child of the United States experience, child of the American economy in that way. What I'm hearing Sister Sadada describe is a kind of freedom that is connected. You know, there was just one thing you said, Sister Sadada, which was, I think you said it something like ask for help. And I'm just starting to be able to feel that ability to ask for help. Now, I'm somebody who usually can go after what I want. I can go after resources. I'm like, I want this from this person. I want this. I want to connect. But that's different than vulnerably, without a sense of control, sincerely asking for assistance, accompaniment, guidance, because I actually don't know where this path is headed. But I'm like sort of earnestly and curiously and vulnerably on a path rather than marching forward or pushing ahead on something I've charted out in my mind. And I chart out good things in my mind, right? It's great, blessed. But I think I'm coming to a place where I'm willing to let go of charting out a path, and to not know, and to actually do things with others and be interdependent with others, which means to be dependent on others. And that's fucking wild for me. So I'm sitting here to y'all. I mean, it even happens with you and me, Derek, like where I'm realizing, oh, like I can like lean on you in a certain way as a friend, just in concept, with a thing that I'm working through. You always demonstrate that you can hold it for me in a way that I don't even know to ask for. And so I'm just very grateful for that. I'm realizing that. And I think that that is so important for us, people who are of the Black tradition, community, identity, experience, to be able to recover for ourselves and with each other, especially at this time. So to me, that also connects back to what Malia had been describing about, oh, right, these systems are crumbling, falling apart. The kind of facade is cracking. And it's like, what do we have? We have ourselves and each other, but like really to feel it and not just be so ready and willing to perform against all odds on my own, which is how I have moved through the world as a child of immigrants, to be frank. So even though I have very close, supportive friends and supportive networks, beautiful, truly, but I am always willing to be like, it's on my own, like on my terms. What if it's not on my terms? What if my terms are irrelevant? And so I'm sitting here feeling that, and it's a little bit exciting and scary.
But has it always been on your terms? Sorry, Sister Sadat, I just had this question. Has it always been on your terms? Because even in your industry, you say, yes, I know this goal, but you still have to negotiate. You still have to coordinate and collaborate with other aspects, whether it's the lender or the other agent or the clients on either side. Like there's still this aspect of negotiation. I mean, I would find it hard to believe if you said, okay, I want this on day one, and on day, 50,
Well, I appreciate
it was
that.
exactly that.
I think we're talking about a level that is in the same way that there's many bodies, like there's many layers of us. There's many layers of my ability to engage and be collaborative and interconnected. I am very connected in my personal life, my friend life, my professional life, my collegial life, beautiful relationships, lots of interconnection. But and ability to collaborate and so on. What I'm talking about is like a survival drive. I'm talking about the why of everything, the why of how I function and how I point myself in a direction, or I'm willing to receive a connection or an opportunity or not. It's it's like I've been tightly coiled and prepared to like shoot out ahead of whatever might lie before me. And so that is what I mean. It's like this kind of against all odds internal kind of conditioning. That yeah, I can be very friendly, but at the end of the day, there's a thing that I'm answering to, which is a survival drive. And so I think if I pull back from that, that's where the freedom that I have yet to really fully experience is. It's the liberation from even trying to win or trying to, as I would say, not fail or, to feel actually truly connected to others. And I'm acknowledging that the fact that I have that difficulty is everything to do with the conditioning of being born here as first in my family from a poor country and really knowing that against all odds, I need to find a way to win. And so I just am saddled with even some of the different conditioning as if you were a Black American, from intergenerationally African American from, the United States. I don't even have that sense of security or feeling of community with Black people. I feel like I need to, no matter what, be able to secure myself. That is very much an immigrant child's drive. And so what's happening right here is like, oh, even that, I don't need that anymore. Like I actually am connected. I can feel suspended and called in this whatever, all this resource. So I've said a lot. I'm curious about what sadada is. 100%.
Yes, thank you. I mean, first, I'd be remiss if I didn't express my gratitude as to uplift the value of what you've done for all of us here, Melody. Like this vulnerability and courage and this peeling back the shit, that is confuse the truth of who you are as somebody who is so deeply connected to this place and this land, like who's here now, right? Like that is so important for us to be listening to, leaning into with each other as Black people who do come from multiple experiences of our own Blackness. Like even Blackness is not a monolith, and you're talking about some real core, I love how you put it, that why, that really is the thing that we are constantly answering to. And I really love what you've done is to make the unseen to us, right? Because we're not in your head, we're not in your heart, so seen. And we need to be doing that as we think about what our powers are, what our wealth is, what our lands are. And I say lands very deliberately, because we're not just one land anymore. Most of us, some of us, are in the lands in which our many ancestors, our indigenous ancestors were, but I'm not. I mean, at least my Black ancestors, my Nipmuc ancestors, yes. And I don't feel like one is better than the other. I think both of them are quite powerful. And, Derek, I also want to lift up, that what I saw you doing in terms of your labor of like saying like, no, actually, I hear what you're saying that you're not a collaborative person, but there are ways in which you are already doing that. And I think that that's important. And as an educator, it is important for us to have we call it a schema, which is the kind of a cognitive framework to enter into a new thing or unknown thing, right? We all have schema that allows us to do that because we're bringing something that's a little familiar, a little known, so that it doesn't feel like a big chasm or a disparate, right? So I just wanted to lift that up because I think that part of, when we talk about blackening, this is not about like homogenizing or singularizing, right? When we think about just the color of Black, every single color mixed together makes the color Black.
Yeah.
And that I think is really important in the Black experience for me, is that it's not a monolith. It's not one thing. It's potent because it has all of what it is in it.
I just one more layer to say. It's like, I like also sadada how you just described. Yeah, basic entry point is I do know how to live in connectivity and collaboration. And, one of the examples that popped right into my mind, as Derek knows, is I live my life by like counsel in a lot of ways. I have groups of people that I consult with when I'm going to make a big decision or shift in my life. I bring in people who've known me from all walks of life to sit together and tell me what I can't see and help me think. But even that comes from this drive. And so what I'm talking about is this drive. It's almost like a desperate survival, um, almost like a frontier pushing kind of drive. That is what I'm curious about loosening right now. That
Do you
for
think
yeah.
do you think part of that comes from not seeing people like you doing this before you?
Yes.
Okay.
That's my first quick answer, but what was your question with that?
But I wonder too if there's some of that is just like a trauma response.
Yeah.
It's so traumatic to have to
Yes.
because of
Yes.
economic oppression, right? Move from a place of homeland to a different homeland. That isn't as welcoming, right? I
Yeah.
mean, let's just be honest. Um, so I wonder too about.
And where I myself feel like I don't belong to either land, do you know?
Oh yeah, of course, of
You
course.
talk about like I am deeply connected. I'm like, oh man, I look forward to where I can feel that because
Mhm.
I'm constantly trying to earn my place.
Sure. And that's what, to me, the embodied experience is really
Yeah.
important in this humaning, right? I'm
Yeah.
not just talking about the physical body, right? Someone who's trained in yoga, we talk about the kleshas, it's the emotional body, the spiritual body. There are these layers of bodiness. You could think about it as layers. You could think about it as a tapestry. I think about it as both sometimes, but this whole notion that when we can be home in the bodies, we can be home wherever we go. We go. We bring those bodies with us.
Yes.
My Angela used to, when she was talking with Spellman and she was telling the women, like, when I go up and speak, I put my ancestors with me. I say, well, come on, so and so, come on, so and so. You call them. You're not ever homeless.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
not talking about people who are without homes, without shelter.
Right.
It's different. That's a problem that
Yeah.
needs to be addressed, right? But I'm talking about a sense, and one can't, it's not one or the other. We're not doing the lesser of two evils here, but I'm talking about that sense of, with the understanding that this really isn't our soul's home. We know, but I'm talking, but to be at home here allows you to go wherever you are and be home.
That's everything.
Well, I think we should probably pause here because I feel like we're going very deep, and I feel like we need we need time to sit with this. I know I need time to sit with this, and I suspect that some of our listeners and watchers might also want some time to sit with this. But also, you've given us a richness to think about, and a richness to carry forward as we let go of other things. So I want to uplift that and thank you for that. I really appreciate it. It's all, like I said, it's always a pleasure speaking with you and hearing your wisdom and having you just be so patient with us as we're trying to navigate this and navigate these identities and navigate these places and spaces that we exist in and that we're either free falling to or passing through. So thank you again for that.
Well, I want to thank you both, and I just want to say to both of you all and your listeners that I think patience is going to be kind of the frontier as we move, as we face our fears, right? And we realize how illusory they are, but you don't know that until you see it, right? And so you stand heart to heart with it. And something my father used to say, and it annoyed me, of course, when he said it, but I've been thinking a lot about it recently. is that patience is waiting for something that might never happen, but waiting anyways, you know?
That's beautiful.
And there's something, both dedication about that, you know? And for me, because of some of what I've been moving through this winter, it's a kind of reparenting that comes with a grace and a loyalty
Yeah.
to what it is that you're needing.
I'm excited. I'm thankful. And I'm curious, Sister Sadada, if there's anything we can offer to you as we wind down this conversation.
Uh, there's always an invitation to support me in my work. As you all know, I work on kind of generosity and gift economy. So on my website or my Patreon, I'm always welcoming that because, I work on a kind of a mutual value-based system that whatever people can offer, that they do that. And that's how I make my living. I ain't got a savings. I ain't got, 401k. There's nothing. There's nothing but what I have, in this heart and these hands. So, to definitely, you're welcome to do that.
Thank you.
And people can find you online at Sister Sadada, spelled SADADA.com.
SADADA, is that what we said?
Yes.
Yes. Sorry.
Hope that's what I said. I'm pretty sure I did. I was thinking about it in my head.
People feel all kinds of way, but on the internet, you'll see it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So check out our website at sistersadada.com. And then for those of you who are listening and watching, feel free to send us comments and questions as well. We love it when we get the questions and comments. It helps to drive us forward, and we can also share them with the guests. So take all this information in, digest it, and we will see you on the next episode of the Black Lining Forum. Take care.